So it's true. All right, looks like we're being recorded now. So
Hello and welcome.
hello and welcome.
Because it's recording, we're starting close to 6 o'clock. This is the DEIB committee for the town of Orono. And 4 of us are present. Who's on Zoom? In addition, see somebody.
I think that might just be us superimposed on a TV screen.
And we ourselves requested closed captioning.
I guess
Perhaps.
like 3 people on the call, but it might just be the screens that we're using.
There are
Any-
2 participants. No one's hand is raised at this time, though.
A number of items that we set ourselves in an agenda from September to now. And one thing is to figure out how we can do these things and with our people power. So the agenda items include follow-up on the formal Orono apology to the Penobscot Tribal Nation Council. And follow-up on the 2023 Human Rights Commission lawsuit and settlement. And planning our co-sponsorship of the November 5th town potluck. And then our thinking ahead to our next meeting and what might happen after with the listening series. So in terms of how we can tackle this work, what are people thinking?
I'm thinking that the potluck is timely, and I want to make sure that we prioritize the planning that we need to do for that as a pretty high item, so I don't want to get I might propose doing that first if others agree, but
Hey, more forces.
hello, Michael, come on in.
The papers that went around, could you
Other
send back?
thoughts?
Yeah, would it be you? Oh, there they
Sorry, we're getting. I like the idea of talking to the potluck first.
Start with that and then get the other business at the end. All right.
like 100 and.
I think that additional items could more easily be tabled for another session, whereas there's a strong timeliness dimension to that one.
Yes, well, with us here, let's be together and say we would be a critical mass to tackle
Appreciate
that
it.
program piece first. Which is coming right up.
It's true. So I guess sort of a little bit of a report back on behalf of the town council is that we kicked off this monthly potluck series at the Keith Anderson Building the first Sunday in October, and it was quite lovely. There were about 65 people who came and participated, so it was a good showing. And the town council was enthusiastic about having the DEIB committee be kind of the featured folks and helping to create the agenda and do more outreach to other folks in our community for the next one. So it's coming right up November 5th, which is pretty soon. So shall we plan us a potluck?
Yeah.
Great.
Absolutely.
What's been done for promotion already on the town council end is that the original announcement for the potluck series had the dates saved. And so some people will have gotten those in the Orono Observer and sort of saved the date. But I think it might be good to do some more promotion, and in particular, including that the DEIB committee is going to be kind of a featured community group at this potluck. And we'd also talked about a Day of the Dead theme, given the timeliness of this potluck. So do we still like that idea?
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think? I think that it will all depend on how quickly we can find everything that we'll need decoration wise.
Cool. Tell me more about what you would imagine decoration wise.
Well, I feel like the hardest thing that we'll have to find is marigolds.
What does that mean,
The
marigold?
flowers.
Yeah,
Oh,
Do we have them?
like fresh flowers?
yeah, so it's a very specific traditional kind of flower. I don't know the significance.
Think Walmart may still have them, because I.
They might, worst case scenario, we could just like fake ones.
Mhm.
If we like Amazon Prime it, we'll probably
I was
like
gonna
before
say,
time.
I have definitely seen marigolds on Amazon, both fresh and otherwise, so what we think is appropriate is good there. That's definitely doable.
Okay, marigolds are a needed decoration item.
Papel picado. Yeah, bringing in my Spanish slang.
Cool. Can you describe what that is?
It's a very thin kind of paper. Usually colorful in shades of purple, orange, red, etc. You guys.
Is it like
can
a
use.
similar to like a tissue paper?
It's more like, you know, that kind of paper you'd use in a dining hall when you have to put a sandwich on, like the grill,
Yeah.
kind of something like that. Let me pull it up.
Also like wax paper.
Yes, kinda.
Okay.
Which is also probably easily found, because that's definitely more common to find. You probably also seen it. like-
Pre-cut, right, or in designs?
Yeah, also, I mean. Because translated, it's just like cutted paper,
Mhm.
and so like usually it looks like this.
Oh, okay, so like more like doilies almost.
Yeah,
So cool.
it's also, in my opinion, better to buy it than to make it, because it's really hard to make. And the fabric and like the material it's made out of is like already very fragile.
So it probably rips really easy.
It ridiculously easy.
So you probably have like the grandmas who are like terrific at that, but then nobody else is that.
Yeah,
good.
literally, or like the moms.
Yeah,
So decorations, important. It sounds like Carlos has a vision for decorations. I wonder if there could be like, if Carlos, you and I could plan to meet early before the potluck and do some prep in advance
Yes,
and
and,
like
like,
make a shopping
If we're
list
gonna
and
make
do
it Day of the Dead, then there's one thing we can't miss, because then it's just us making a Mexican November thing. We need an altar.
An altar, okay.
can you tell me what some of those things include that we would like to either, what the actual altar itself needs to
So
look
an
like, and then
so
what-
the altar would basically just mean that we need photos of people who are dead.
Okay.
So like we could all bring a photo like of a dear loved one who's passed away.
My grandmother just passed in April, so that would
Yeah,
actually be
so-
something that I'd really like to do.
And what we do in Mexico is that November 1st, we dedicate it for children who passed away. November 2nd is the actual dividends. And so what we do is we make our altar since the 31st of October. And so you put out like the tablecloth on the table, you put a bunch of candles on it. Of some sugar skulls sometimes. And you put the photo and so that the dead person's soul can find their way. And so what's also customary is you get foods and stuff that they liked when they were living. So like if your dead person liked tequila a lot, you get them a little bottle of tequila on it. That's what we used to do with one of my grandparents, I think.
I love this.
You get like if they like tamales, you would make some tamales.
Right,
And we also have a specific kind of bread that we make, which was just like a regular. Somewhat sweet bread piece.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, with like spreaded sugar on top of it. Let me look it up. There's a
Oh,
lot of
yeah,
it.
I know exactly what you're talking about then, but I'm not sure the word for it.
Pan de muerto,
Yeah,
Cool. So
dead man's bread.
I was gonna say it's literally dead man's bread.
cool. So a couple thoughts and report backs. Sarah Marks, my fellow town councilor, when she heard we were thinking of a Day of the Dead theme, excitedly volunteered to make sugar skulls with kids as a activity. Do we like that idea?
I love that.
Love that idea. Okay, great. I'll tell her to move forward with that. And then also, she had has some musicians in mind who are either from Mexico or of Mexican heritage and would be excited to play some traditional music. So should we say, well, yes, please, let's try to get those musicians?
Yes, that I
Okay,
also think that a
great.
fun thing to do would be to like find it, we can find somewhere either here or in Bangor, because
Mhm.
and that does pan de muerto, because doesn't this look good as
That
hell?
does look
I
good.
do think there's one in Bangor that is like,
Yeah, I've heard of there's a place in Bangor that does pan dulce.
yeah, I'm pretty
Doesn't
sure
this look delectable?
they do like Mexican pastries.
Yeah.
I'll have to look them back up, but I think I know
I can ask the Caribbean and Latin American Society.
Yeah, that would be
If
perfect.
they can give me the info.
Yeah, speaking of them, we should invite them all to this potluck.
Oh, yeah, I should say
Yeah,
that.
So a couple things that I'm thinking about is like promotion. Who do we want to invite? I feel like we definitely want to invite people who grew up celebrating Day of the Dead and for whom it's important.
I think we should
And
invite,
everybody, obviously everyone's invited, but some strategic outreach to like CALSA, for example.
Alsa
Yep.
is a good one, and I think the other big target would be this another two favorite.
Mhm.
The what?
Programs. CALSA, the Caribbean and Latin American Society.
And what was the other?
It's might be association.
Student Association, I think, whatever. Anyway,
Oh, yeah, Student Association. I always forget what's that day. I don't know why. The Spanish Club
Yes.
Mhm.
and OIP. And ODI.
OIP, also Chispa and WIN. Okay,
All the organizations,
What-
all that.
Can we say what all those things are?
I don't know what Chispa stands for. I just know they exist and do salsa dance events sometimes.
Ooh,
And I have their
alright.
contact. And WIN is the Welcoming Immigrant Neighbors Group, which is a project of the Maine Multicultural Center.
What's the acronym on that one?
WIN, WIN. So I could reach out to Chispa and WIN.
Okay,
Do you want to reach out to ODI, Spanish Club and CALSA?
I can reach out to CALSA Spanish Club, and we can also invite OIP.
Oh, OIP, that's what I meant, not ODI. Okay.
No, they-
OIP
they did say
is
ODI.
The,
Office of International Programs.
yeah,
ah,
it's like they can reach out to any students who are from Latin America. And just everyone in general who is international.
Okay, so I'll do ODI, you do OIP.
Yes.
Great. We've split some targeted reach outs in half. So
Was it you who created a flyer last time, Michael?
yes, and I was actually
Should
just
be
going to
interesting.
volunteer to do a graphic design. Obviously, I will not make this really cheesy,
yeah,
obviously, because this is an event that is both fun but also respectful.
yeah, maybe if you want to put together a design, send it to Carlos
I will,
for
yeah.
approval, and then I can print them and we can get them out. I think the sooner the better on doing some outreach for this event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there things that I should highlight other than like the marigolds?
The main thing should be the altar
Yes,
and the marigold, because the marigold is usually
Okay.
a part of the altar.
so you think it would be good to include like the altar, the candles, maybe, is there anything specific that we see for like the cloth that usually is on the altar?
Not specifically, but I do imagine it for some reason in my mind was like a purplish, because
That's exactly what I think of, like a royal purple.
yeah, kind of, with like a bit of like stripes on it. I don't know why, 'cause like a
Okay.
grandma kind of vibe.
Yeah, like maybe like some gold.
Maybe, yeah,
Okay.
because like the vibe here is really like a bit dark, because this is a celebration about acceptance of death as a normal thing in life.
Right.
And remembrance, which is a very nice way of thinking of death instead of, you know.
I do think that American culture does tend to be a little bit somber,
Bit.
like overtly somber about death. And I feel like I have such an amazing appreciation for cultures that are like, all right, my person is dead. We're sad and we're grieving, but we're grieving together. All right, let's celebrate the hell out of these people.
Yeah, it's so weird, because depending also like the family in Mexico, it'll be like the Day of the Dead and anything, but we also do another type of funeral, which is like the 9 days of grieving.
Right.
And you do a mass, like tiny mass with the family members of like the dead person for like 9 days. The 9th day, you stay up all night, go to mass the next morning, walk back to your house where the dead casket is, walk into a local graveyard, and bury him.
Hmm.
I know this because I had to go to one the last year.
Hmm.
Who tagged?
My uncle Antonio died of AIDS. The good thing is that they cremated him before we started the thing, so it was just a year that we had to carry.
Not the whole casket.
Yeah, exactly. But no, yeah, I'd also say go with like a dark background. Cause a lot of these colors are like contrasting each other.
Right.
I also think a fun activity we could do for like kids is that if we can, we could screen a movie for them.
How do you feel
My-
about Coco?
In my opinion, I would not say Coco. I feel the Book of Life is a much better
I
one
was gonna suggest
when it
Book of
comes to
Life.
Day of the Dead. Both are good, but like. If I ask my friends who've seen both, they always tell me they prefer the Book of Life.
Good to know. How long is that? Is that a full like feature length?
It's like a kids movie, so like an hour and
It's a full
30.
feature length
Hour
Disney
and
film.
30? So
It's not Disney.
Is it not Disney?
It's not Disney.
Was it, it's gotta be Pixar then.
It's not.
No, it's Disney.
It's like.
Who is
Anywho.
it?
so those are good thoughts.
The kids have got Sugar Skulls and the movie both. Or
I think that's a good thing, and we could also.
the kids were really well, they must have had somebody on that topic because in
Yeah.
the front on the stage, the last one.
Yeah,
there's this
there
whole
were
kids
a
area.
couple of volunteers who'd been tapped to run games and crafts for kids.
So we were keeping our kiddos well
So
entertained.
that could be the case again this time, and Sarah Marks like offered to be that person who keeps the kids corralled and entertained, so.
And the
Yeah, we
stage
could-
is just in view, so nobody
Yeah.
can lose their kids. They can see them the
Yeah.
whole
Yeah, I
time.
feel like that's a good way of getting the kids entertained for Sugar Skull activity.
And
And
a
I
movie
think a
section.
good thing we could have, like, no age gap would be face painting.
Oh, that's right. Gabriel Frey had offered to do face painting.
Yeah, because it's
So-
a very
Yeah,
good.
because he was saying that he has this really
Yeah.
fancy set because his daughter has allergies, and so he's
Yeah.
got this beautiful set that he said he uses all the
Exactly.
time to paint their faces.
Do one of us want to reach out to him and double check if he's available to face paint at this event?
Sure.
Great, thanks, Malcolm. You can do a reach out. I'm also thinking about, so this will be a really fun celebration, I think, for folks who love Day of the Dead and are getting to, some of them celebrate it for the first time and some of them for, the umpteenth time. But I'm curious if anyone from the DEIB committee wants to give a little like pitch for who we are and what we're doing, and if ways to get involved or something like that as
I'm
kind of an
happy to do
announcement.
so.
You
I'd
wanna,
love to kind of,
would you like to do the,
yeah, I'd love
little-
to kind of get a definitive thing of how we wanna talk about ourselves, because I
Yeah.
obviously wanna like,
I think going back to the charge that the town council had written and maybe making a little blurb that's like kind of a summary of that.
yeah,
And that also is sort of welcoming and inclusive if there are folks who want to join, and especially BIPOC folks, it could be a nice little opportunity to,
yeah, I may
Share
spit
that
the
there's
draft
opportunities.
into the email chain then.
seems good, seems good. All right, so Michael announced.
Is that like how the Historical Society did it last month?
Exactly, so last
So
week,
It goes
like,
on, it goes on, people eat, people enjoy talking to each
Yeah.
other, and then there's kind of a moment for
for like
tonight's
featured
feature.
or tonight's sort of
5-minute
partner
time.
organization. Yeah, what are they up to and that kind of thing. Does that seem good? Is there anything else that? Oh, another thing that we did at the last potluck that this committee could think about doing again is we put some like whiteboard flip chart paper on the wall with a couple questions that were things like, what would you like to see this potluck series be like? Or, sort of what's your favorite thing about Orono? Those kinds of questions. And so similar to what we did at the library, if there were a couple questions specific to this committee that we wanted engagement on from people who are at this event.
I'd love if we were
could do
kind
that.
of looking, like, since this is specifically a Dia de los Muertos event, I think that it would be really interesting to kind of get an idea of like, what does this holiday mean to you? What
Yeah.
does?
Or if we wanted to make it kind of inclusive to people of different backgrounds, like, what's your favorite holiday? And then people can be sharing something about themselves that's
Yeah,
important.
I think it would be nice to tie it sort of into what the ideas
Mhm.
of the holiday are about, maybe like
Yeah.
talking about like, how do you connect with others in a time of grieving or
But like,
How do you remember your ancestors?
yeah, how do you remember your loved ones or your ancestors? What do you think would be a better phrasing for that?
How do you honor the memory of the ones that came before?
like that.
Mm,
I have a way before
Okay.
it sometimes.
do we like that? Do we
Yes.
honor the memory of those who came before? Okay.
Cause, well, I like the idea of like, what's your favorite holiday? I also think that there's sort of like an undertone of wanting to think
Mhm.
like in a more like deep level about what like the concept that this kind of event centers around.
Yeah.
And it sort of gives like an extra level of respect
Yeah.
towards like what Dia de los Muertos is like supposed to be for.
That was an amazing burst of creativity, people.
Woohoo.
That took less than 20 minutes and I heard the following covered. Some publicity, some invites, some decorations, some kids' activities, some music invites, some face painting invites, some altar building instructions to the 5 of us at least. And so do more people need those instructions too to bring something that night, or do you want that?
I say that like, if we get like a big enough table, we should all just have like, at least I feel like anyone who wants to participate from like the council, et cetera, should bring a photo and a piece of food for the friend.
Represents them.
The ofrenda, if we want to get fancy.
I'm gonna bring the drink I can find with the most red dye 40, because that was all my grandmother drank. Like those little packets of like Hawaiian punch. Lived off that. That was her thing.
And we heard a pitch or a synopsis for the DEIB committee will be prepared and given by Michael. And we heard a beautiful question that could be displayed on a paper that, I don't think that one had a home in terms of who would make it. But it was the question, how do you honor
Yeah.
the memory of those who came before?
I can bring flip chart paper or make sure that that can happen.
Leah, what's on your mind? What can we hear from you about this?
Firstly, I love the idea of the flip, well, everything was great, the flip chart. I wonder if there's a way that we could have it on each table. I noticed that it was hard for me to make my way over and it was by the piano, and so I just never even had a chance to.
I think a series of smaller pads.
Yeah,
maybe
like
that-
smaller piece of paper, and it could be a conversation that people have at the tables. So that's one thought. Secondly, last time at the potluck, the music was a bit loud and it was challenging for me to have conversations with people.
That's true.
I think that would also be
So-
challenging.
That
for
space
those-
filled up with the sound.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
do
so
also think that.
I'm not sure how to address that, but especially if we're having a band, I'm
Yeah,
I wonder if
Pause
I'm being
there.
creative
Let's
about
pause there.
sound.
that's smart. And
Yeah.
what I heard, again, from Sarah, who knows the band, is that they would not intend to play like the whole time like Rob did last time, but rather like half an hour. So
Okay.
that could be a little bit, we could have adjustable and quieter background music on somebody's phone and then have band either at the start as people are gathering or probably at the start as people are gathering. Does that feel like the best time?
I feel like
for
it might be
everybody?
better to do like a spotlight time.
Or
or-
spot-
Yeah,
What do you
Like
think?
I
basically,
think it'd be like 45 minutes after the potluck starts, when people are arriving, we're eating, we're enjoying themselves.
yeah, like
And
when
we play-
everybody is sort of like hanging out, maybe
Yeah, and, like-
after we do the DEIB announcement, we can do like, here's who we are, and now here's our band, and then let them do that.
Yeah, like everyone's eating and now they can dance to the music, to their chest.
Gotta leave room for the dance floor.
Okay,
We gotta.
So it's
okay,
like, if we're doing
so-
a day of a dance,
so
you gotta
dance
dance.
and
Gotta have
music
the Mexican
after announcement. Great.
And we
Do-
didn't talk about food. We just zipped right past
So
the food.
It's
Oh,
a
yeah.
potluck.
So there's
people
nothing to
bring
talk
stuff.
about.
So I think that people can bring what they're gonna bring, but we should definitely encourage some of our friends who, like to cook Mexican food to come. I know, exactly.
You have the-
Subtle. Subtle.
We could also just have like a little table
Mhm.
with a few plates, like maybe tamales, just for
Mhm.
people to try.
Mhm.
And instructions on how to open tamales.
Oh my God, we don't want people straight biting the corn husks.
So,
I don't doubt with someone well.
We're gonna have at least one person, but we should like chaperone that table so people don't eat the tamales.
Just like bright red instructions beside it.
Do not just bite into the tamales.
Like have some instructions.
Yes, because I've seen so many bits of like MTV and I don't, and in social media where like people don't realize a tamal is actually wrapped in like
mhm.
plantain leaves
Yeah.
and just go straight into it.
And then are like, oh my God, this tastes terrible. And it's like, because you're not supposed to eat the plantain leaves. Unwrap it, eat it like that.
It's not that it's terrible, you're just uncultured in this area. To avoid saying other mean words.
So I just thought of one other thing, which is, I think there will be a range of knowledge and understanding at this event of people who know what this holiday is about and people who don't know what the holiday is about. Would it be helpful to have like, when maybe right after Michael talks, like an explicit little, here is what Day of the Dead is and what its kind of educational announcement? Would you be interested in giving this educational announcement?
Sure.
Great.
That's it, I can keep myself in.
It could either be, it could be at the start of the event, it could be in the middle. I guess I could say.
I feel like the best time to do it would be like in between the announcement of who we are and the band.
The band.
Yeah, so
Okay.
right after mine works,
Great.
yeah. I think that obviously, in the interest of not putting an intense amount of pressure on you, I think that it's okay if this explanation / elaboration on the holiday is a little surface level. Because of course you can include as much history as you feel is appropriate. But I also think that it's good if we're sort of just introducing people into the idea of Dia de los Muertos.
And
It's
whoever wants to
easier.
learn more about it. just
They
Google it.
can
Yeah, they
Google
can do
it.
their own
Short and
research.
sweet,
Google
short
is
and sweet
free.
Intro, yes.
I also wonder if it might be beneficial to have some kind of very brief description in the flyer. Because I want people who aren't aware or familiar with this holiday to feel like they can come and
Yeah.
celebrate it.
Yeah.
So beyond just saying like all are welcome, I think maybe saying something about like honoring
Yeah,
those who have come before
Mhm.
you. Just a very brief description so that people know that even if this isn't part of their cultural heritage, that they are welcome.
Man,
And
now
it's
that I
something
hear it
we
out
can all
loud, I
relate
don't like
to.
how we phrased it. Saying those who came before us. I don't like it, cause it also could, cause we're not also specifying how long before. Cause it makes me think ancestry instead of like past those.
I would say honoring those who have passed, maybe.
Or like, I was gonna say honoring those who are no longer with us.
I like that.
That's a bit better
A little bit more straight to the point.
and no interest of conflict with any group. Hopefully.
Awesome. Well, we put that program piece first because of the timeliness on the calendar. That will be next Sunday night, November 5th.
Yes,
Have we got what we need on that topic?
I think so.
Then we
Uh,
good. I'll jump.
In the interest of, I'm good at cooking. So, I am not heavily familiar with, specifically like specific Mexican dishes, but is there any you think that somebody would not bring that you would like somebody to bring?
I would think that the main thing we should probably have is tamales.
Okay.
I think the NLC might have corn husks at least, which would work.
If not, we could also try making pozole or mole.
That's good.
And I like eating mole.
Yeah, there's I can send some more ideas.
I'd say
offline at some
tacos,
point,
but that feels a bit too on the nose. What is it? I'd say tacos, but that feels a bit too on the nose for us. And I feel like that's just propelling a stereotype.
Yeah, I feel like that's simplifying it down a little.
Yeah. And I feel like pozole, tamales, or mole is a bit more traditional. And something you wouldn't expect regularly done.
Yeah.
Definitely will have you send me some more info on that, since it seems you're familiar with that dish.
I am, yes. Okay, we
All right,
can be in
let's-
touch.
see if we can do another piece of work. The
Okay.
next one going to the top would be follow up on the letter of apology that we encouraged at our special meeting in September. We encouraged a formal written letter from town council to tribal council, formal tribal council. So we have two possibles in front of us. I don't know if everybody had a chance to read these on email earlier today. So brought hard copies. Sonia thought the same. She brought hard copies. Tell us about what is in progress.
Sure, so, couple of town councilors, have collaboratively written this, long version draft letter of apology. And then another town councilor reading this made the sort of possible, hey, what do we think of a shorter version letter of apology? And so there are kind of two versions that we could consider and would love your input about which of these feels like a better thing to send, or and I will say, by way of additional follow-up, one of my fellow town councilors, I think, is also going to run these two drafts by some of the Penobscot folks who were part of the consultation process back a couple of years ago, who had offered to read draft apology letters and give some feedback. So there will be kind of another layer of review beyond this committee, but if this committee had opinions, we would love to hear them. And also within the second shorter version draft apology letter, it's sort of drafted to call out these draft recommendations regarding the signage change process, which these started out as a document that Councillor Marks had put together and given to us to think about, but then at our special meeting, this group had kind of gone through this, said, yeah, we think that's true, and then added some. And so this is my best stab at having added what I thought the additional context from our meeting was into a thing that if you folks still think those are good recommendations for the town council, you all could say, could officially adopt them and give them to the town council saying, these are some recommendations. But it's kind of up to you. I also, sort of for the public record, Emily, who's not at tonight's meeting, did send an email that she was sorry to miss it, and had said that she liked the long version and also thought that the recommendations accurately captured this group's recommendations. So that was her 2 cents remotely, but I'm curious, other folks who got a chance to review this, what your thoughts are.
So,
I know it's a lot of information hitting you all at once this afternoon.
all right, so I have a lot of thoughts about this.
Great.
So I read this earlier today
Mhm.
and I've read both versions. I somehow didn't end up with the short version, but I had ended up with 6 of the long, so those for you.
The short version, there's a
I
copy
did
of that
read
right
this one
there.
and went up. So basically, my thoughts on this in less intensity than I gave myself earlier
Mhm.
are, I basically think that the short version is unacceptable.
Okay. So
So,
you like the long, do you
Yes.
like the long version better, and does that
Yes.
seem acceptable to you?
so I'm a heavy proponent for the long version because I believe it outlines with enough like depth that I feel like it actually feels meaningful. It feels like we've actually reflected on the actions that were taken and the impacts that were had. And I feel like that it addresses each piece of the problem while also promising the sort of solutions, resolutions, whatever you'd like to call it. And I feel like the short version both minimizes the direct acknowledgement and proposal of the issues that happened, and it provides a sort of a way to say, okay, we are genuinely acknowledging each piece of what happened. And so it sort of, it simplifies it down a little bit. But I remember when I was a kid, when like people always talked about what an apology is supposed to be. It was always like, I'm sorry, I did this, this, and this. And then it was, I will or will not do this, this, and this. And I feel like the long version perfectly elaborates exactly what we're looking for, in that it gives a chance to outline everything that happened. And it also sort of is a good document for almost a replacement for the failure of documentation that happened in some of these areas. And I feel like it's a good, because obviously it even acknowledges that some of the documentation is missing, and for follow-ups and things like that. And I think that serves as the document to say, we went back through everything that happened and we actually went over this with a fine-tooth comb, and we made, like, we are genuinely putting out there that we would like to repair the relationship in this, and this way. That's one of those big things that I felt like was so important, was that there was clear, definitive, actual steps that could be done to repair the relationship between the town council and the Penobscot Nation. Because I feel like the short version just feels far too rushed. It feels like it doesn't acknowledge the things in the depth that this issue really needs. I feel like if we're worried about not doing any more informal apologies, then the short version is pretty unacceptable.
Thank you, Michael, for going first. And have others had a chance to look at both? And
Yeah,
Your thoughts?
earlier today, I had a chance to read both and I concur with Michael. I think that in this case, it is important to document the entire process. And I mean, if you look at the length, it's just one extra page. It's not a significant difference in terms of length. And yet the apology seems much more sincere in the longer version. In the shorter version, to me, it came across almost as if there was some language that seemed almost like we weren't taking accountability for the harmful repercussions of our actions.
That's really where I was kind of getting that informality feel as well.
That's
How about
really
you,
helpful to
Carlos?
hear. I think the intent of the short version was to be briefer and to have something that would, if we like showed up as the town council and read it aloud, would be simpler to read aloud. But also if it's losing context that feels important in the context of an apology, and like a couple of different people are really feeling that, then that's really valuable feedback. So thank you.
I feel like
I
I
was
would much rather.
partial to the short one because it seemed action oriented.
Mm,
And if I'm on the receiving end, I don't know if I want to spend 2 hours with the emotional process of the people apologizing, but I do want to see what's the commitment and what's the action. However, I was swayed by what each of you said about, like, there was a documentation miss before, and if we capture it in the most extended version possible, then that documentation itself provides something.
Yeah, I also feel like there's a lot that I feel like I'd rather, obviously, I'm not a member of the Penobscot Nation, but if I was a group of people with a long history of feeling wronged,
mhm.
and I felt like they were only shortening this apology for the sake of not having a representative read it very long, I think that feels like we've kind of overlooked what the actual point of this is. I feel like if there's a representative who can go and read this and like read it in a way that is actually what the intention is behind it, because if you're going to be reading it out loud, I definitely would be very intentional about the representative and how they read it, because I think that I've done performance poetry for years, and I can tell you that one of those things that connects with an audience is your tone and the way you speak, what you're saying, how you're saying it. And there's really an intense amount that can go into that. But I also feel like while there is that emotional aspect, I also feel like this is validation, like, for this group to say, like, we we've been wronged over this long period of time at this point, several years. And now we actually get to see these people go through everything that they've done and say, and so it marks off almost each, like, we're sorry for this happening. And it kind of can be like retroactively validation for the things that we should have said that we did.
I have a question about one thing that's on page 1 of the long version.
Sure.
And I don't see it in the other, but it was in the parentheses at the bottom. We
Mhm.
took a vote
Oh, yeah.
to this effect on the state. Is that something that it exists? So that's correct. It just needs filled in, or is it yet to happen?
That is yet to happen. So the current status of this process is several town councilors have looked at and been part of the drafting of these letters. We're running it by you folks. We're gonna run it by some Penobscot folks who have agreed to look at it. And then if there's a strong recommendation for one of these letters to move forward to council, the town council would get to look at it and take a vote. And if they vote to move forward with this apology, then that would be, passed as an order or resolution or something at a
That would
meeting
fit
on
in as such.
X date. And so that's what those X's are, is a hypothetical future date at
Okay.
which this becomes an official document of the town council. Does that make sense as process?
I think if this is definitely going to become an official document of the town council, I really think that that documentation piece is
Mhm.
even more important, because I think that then people who will either the people who will come into the council later, whether that be this council or be town council, or if it be another representative body of the town, that they can look back and say like, okay, here's the history of our relationship with the Penobscot Nation, and here's what we can, like, here's how we could get better, and here's what we did to get better. And it sort of builds a great foundation to not let history repeat itself.
What are our thoughts on what Sonia added, which is draft recommendations, which is like from the DEIB side, right? Not just the town council. Do we have on 1 through 11, do we have some feedback or ideas for something like this as part of or supplemental to the letter of apology?
Yeah, I was unclear on that. Are these recommendations 1 through 11 going to be a part of both, either letter, whichever one is?
I think they were conceived as attached to the second letter, but they could be. They could either just be a standalone document. If you all are like, these are good recommendations, we recommend them, then you can signal that and we can make sure that they go to the town council as like the DEIB committee's recommended way forward with this. And if you recommend that appending them to the long version of this letter, we could also run that up the flagpole as well, although it wasn't the original, the way that was originally conceived. What are your thoughts, Jeff?
I love these 11 recommendations. I hadn't seen these before. I worked with Sarah and some other councilors on the drafts. Whether your recommendation is to append them to the letter or not, I think it's really important that whatever form of these 11 that the DEIB committee decides on goes to council as sort of a formal recommendation to the DEIB committee, because that really would be the first time that you guys will have made a recommendation to council. That in itself is sort of precedent setting. So it would be really nice to have, whether you attach it or not, it would also be nice to have these as a standalone document, just as a recommendation to council.
There is a couple of these that I found particularly important.
Yeah.
So the big one for me was 1, 4, and 8. So 1 being that they develop some a better process checking with cultural consultants to be sure that the council has understood what they're saying is so enormous, because I think one of the biggest parts of one of the biggest, I feel like, issues that I watched, that I noticed while seeing the the actual clips of the meetings and then seeing what happened and other documentation, I really do feel like there was a lot of, all right, well, we're gonna interpret this because it's the lens that we have. But unfortunately, as the council is primarily white folks, unfortunately, that means that you are sifting through a lens that is not the same thing as the source. And so I do feel like we had some lost in translation sort of things where things were getting sort of seen through the eyes of not the source. And I do feel like it diluted it a little bit. And so I feel like going back and making sure that we're sort of sticking as close to like what was said, what was meant, making sure we know what was meant and sticking with that rather than filtering it through any kind of lens that doesn't make enough sense. Also, I feel like highlighting consultants and other just consultants as a whole concept. Being paid and paid appropriately for their time.
This is one that was definitely added coming out of our last meeting. That was
Yeah,
one.
I think that that's so huge because I think that that shows that we have placed a certain high value on their opinions, their time, their work. And it says like, we value this and we want to show you that we value this. And I think that that's super important. And I think 8 is about utilizing the DIB. And I think that one of the big things about that is we can sort of in turn become also almost a cultural consultant in a way where we kind of become like a here and there mouthpiece for what they think of what we can do sort of in the middle of the chain, where we're both representing people who are both like us and not like us. And so we can sort of be kind of like a midpoint for if people are either misunderstanding or misinterpreting and kind of being like, okay, like, and almost like holding accountable and being like, okay, did you talk to these people enough? Did you consult this person? And really making sure that like everything is a-okay before it goes out so that we can sort of prevent any missteps before they even happen.
I also recognize 10 and 11 from conversation on the DIB committee last month. We lifted up the land acknowledgement, which is not just land acknowledgement, but this whole resolution acknowledging the historic and contemporary Indigenous presence in Orono. And we said how important it was to live into that because it exists it calls us forward into the best possibilities. Wait, did I see 11?
Yes, 11.
Oh, Wabanaki Reach, I recognize that, or another entity that is running trainings that wants to run trainings for a town like Orono that we could draw on their program.
Yeah, I think trainings for multiple different groups would benefit staff who are in high level positions, who make decisions for the town as a whole. So whether that's like the council or it's other staff who write things, who interpret things, whatever that looks like. I think that that's so important because I know that I've had a lot of jobs and a lot of them have had like sort of sensitivity trainings, but they're very shallow. They don't actually give you an idea for what that group is like, how you actually need to treat that group as a person who's not in it. And I feel like that obviously, yeah, if Wabanaki Reach is willing to work with us and the town, I think that they would be an absolutely invaluable resource.
So a follow-up on that is that Doug had reached out to them and had gotten kind of an auto reply he passed on. And that's kind of where that was, but I think that we could reach out again and Sarah Marks had offered to look into that further about potential for training and kind of pick up that ball if that's.
Yeah, I would, one of the things that I would love to do is I'm actually trained in safe zone training. I did trainings for my previous university, and I feel like that overlaps a lot.
Yeah.
Because not only is it a focus on queer spaces, but it's also a focus on really unity and the concept of anybody who isn't like you and how to relate to them. And I'd love to run that for the town.
Other thoughts on 1 through 11, or do we need more time with this on email or at another meeting? We're looking at it now. We also had this question for ourselves at the special meeting in September, which was, how are we gonna function well to follow up over time? There was a suggestion that it be somebody's thing among us, that somebody keep a record book of it.
Yeah, like-
Keep us remembering what's in progress, keep us tracking with what's still ahead of us. I feel like if we come at that and have a clearer sense of how we'll serve that function, we could improve some of these for the town council to know how to draw on us or what we can provide. There's some really excellent, but also vague at the same time, recommendations in here about we should have a better process to do what we say we're gonna do. That's like absolutely true of every group everywhere. How can we really do it?
What's the additional step in that process? Like,
Yeah,
one more, keep going.
yeah.
I think one of the big things I wanted to talk about with that was what form we wanted our sort of project journal, I think is what it was referred to. What we want that to look like. Does that look like kind of a document that we're publishing? Does that look like something like, does it look like a series of things that we're putting out? I wanted to kind of get a sense of what you guys wanted to do there. Like, what do we want this form to be? Like, are we, because I'm certainly happy to sort of collect up like various people's notes, and like, obviously we have copies of like agendas and things like that, but I also want to add like people's like sort of feelings on this as well, like sort of an idea of like, what did we actually think we did in that meeting? Like, what was significant? And I think that sort of document that I want to keep it sort of alive and going. I know that there would be some like retroactive work, obviously, since we've had a good handful of meetings now, but I want to see like, what do we want from that? What do we want from our documentation?
Would you like to try something out and bring it to our next meeting, bring it back and say, here's some things I'm thinking of.
Yes.
How could it be better? And then have people,
I think I'd like to check in on what I'm allowed. Because I want to make sure I'm adhering with the open meeting laws.
Yeah, so I think that where open meeting law gets a little bit weird is if you have like multiple people all editing the same document, then that could be construed as like meetings, like decisions or meetings happening out of the public view, which would be a violation of open meeting law. But if it's one person who's keeping track of things and that is like viewable and accessible to other people, that isn't an issue,
Which
is my understanding.
I'm
So
happy to be the
So,
DIB
yeah,
historian.
if you want to be the person with the spreadsheet that's tracking like, you know, when did we talk about this last? What were the action items? What's the link to the document that was supporting it, and kind of have whatever your system is.
Yeah.
I don't think there would be an issue. And if there is, like, we can identify that at our next meeting in the process of reviewing a draft that you come up with. I feel fine with let's let Michael come up with a draft organizational system as a path forward to other people as well.
yes.
I've
And I
developed
think-
a lot of-
I know, Chief Lowe, I'm trying to remember, I feel like you had some good advice or a thought last time we were talking about this in terms of.
I recommended you keep like a log,
Yes.
journal of.
Yeah, that's where I got journal done, is definitely from you.
So this is, yeah, this is your good idea we're taking and running with. Thank you.
Right, so like the critical thing, we
Yeah.
have this on the agenda again in a month's time, we would say, oh yeah, about that thing, we recommended the long form to the town council and
Yep.
knew that they had
So
yet to vote on it, so we
could we
remind
just-
ourselves of that next month, we can say.
This is like not a group that has a formal voting capacity necessarily, but can we just do a quick like poll, show of thumbs, long version, short version, either version, like what are we feeling on the,
And nobody here spoke for this, the short version.
I think nobody here spoke.
I
for the
mean, we
short
kind of
version,
had like an
encouraging
integrated
the-
mix on
unless
it.
you've got a thought, okay,
Technology.
all right. Is it, do we have consensus around the long version being the preferred one?
Yes,
Yes, okay, great. And that was Emily's thought remotely as well.
yes.
So
So thank you for conveying that
Yes.
back to town council.
I can do that.
In the manner that you do such things.
Woohoo.
I have a question about the log.
The open meeting law.
How
The
is,
log.
how is that going to be different and or complementary to meeting minutes?
So it'll sort of be a document that runs over. That spans our entire sort of existence. As well as it'll include, instead of just the minutes, it'll include supplementary documents, links to things like that. It's sort of like a public facing way to keep information together, because a lot of people are not always reading the minutes. I think I want to keep it also in a very level friendly kind of format. So I want people to be able to understand it no matter what, because I think that sometimes when you have like the Orono seal and all the really fancy like text, it can be a little daunting. Because I think, so I want people to be able to read this with some ease, and I want to be able to provide also like our thoughts, because sort of we get to sort of like brief down some of our thoughts in like the minutes and stuff like that, but I feel like if we're getting more, it's an expanded over time minutes, I suppose.
Are there
So I'm-
minutes at this point? Have there been minutes of meetings at this point?
We've had some minutes taken, but not in a really formal way where they're all like on the town website, the way we do for some of the other committees.
Which is sort of what I'm intending. by
And
this.
it
If
would
we
be,
had minutes, they would be a snapshot of a moment in time, multiple issues. I think the log suggestion is one issue over time.
So the other thing with the log is things that you do outside, if
Mhm.
you take on an activity outside, for
Yeah.
instance. We were talking about connecting with people for this or that.
Mhm.
It's just a way to record that, which would be outside of it. So there's no cross duplication of effort or whatever. The more technical your projects get, the more you're gonna want that type of being able to cross-check, if that makes sense.
Right.
That's really what the log is. The minutes are definitely needed and they're that high value, but if for instance, council says, yes, we're gonna fix the road. Then Rob Yerkes would keep a log that says, this is what we did and how we did it, and stuff like that. That's really what the recommendation.
I think it
that's why I-
expands the process as well, because I think that in minutes it tends to be like, oh, councilman has said this is gonna happen, but there's no like expansion on it, like. Here's how we got from here, here and here, and now we said we're gonna fix the road.
It's more detailed.
So
Yeah,
from
exactly.
tonight, and a second question to us is, what note would we give ourselves from the discussion of the 11 recommendations? Are we gonna work at these? Are we going to say hooray? Put them in the same process as the letter?
I think that I would like to see us like. Kind of vote on recommendations out of these that we think are particularly important. And then we can kind of come back to it and say. Like. What do we want from this? So we maybe let's start with like an informal, which ones do we think are most important? And then we can decide next time, like, where do those fit into the letter? If we want to recommend them in a specific spot. And then from there, or if we want to make them a supplementary document, what does that look like? But I think let's highlight what ones we think are important. And then we can kind of go from there.
I'm hearing supplement in progress. How's that sound? And that we would need to boil them down somehow and write. Yes.
So will we, at a time outside of this meeting, have an opportunity to review, provide comments? Or are we spending time during this meeting going over these?
I think tonight's time won't allow much, but we can either put it on the agenda for next time or say this is work that we could do on email.
Is there a timeline for when we would like the apology to be delivered?
So. I think it would be probably helpful to the town council to just have your stamp of approval on this long version apology. And I sort of think the list of recommendations are valuable as well, but could be a separate item that don't necessarily need to be attached to this apology. And it's probably helpful for the town council to have those and see them, you know, without too many more months elapsing as well, because as you heard from one of them, this is a helpful document that's good to see, but but if you know, if there's some opportunity to really crystallize and make those recommendations more helpful, then that doesn't feel to me like it needs to hold up the apology process necessarily. It's kind of what I'm thinking.
So my recommendation based on that is we move forward with recommending the long form of the apology and then spend more time reviewing the 11 recommendations
As
and submit
supplementary.
that as a standalone document
Yeah.
that can be used for, I mean, I think that it can be complementary to the letter, but it certainly doesn't have to be a part of the letter. It can just be part of our process moving forward.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Okay,
Great.
Carlos?
I have not had the chance to read both of the things.
No
Because
worries.
I had a very busy day because I had a test.
So does that suit you to spend more time next month?
Yes.
Reviewing, talking about, good. All right,
So that's our stamp on the long format.
Great.
then.
I will tell the town council that that is the recommendation of this group. Much appreciated.
and what time do we have till?
7:30.
Okay, all right. The next item would be the public version of the question of the 2023 Human Rights Commission lawsuit and settlement.
Yes, I
Yeah.
wanted to.
So I think that this item got left off the sort of official agenda because it may not be within this group's charge and the purview of this group to like discuss details about town staff members in a public forum, but also this is a lot of information about this case is a matter of public record to which you all have access and are eligible. And so I think it's possible that I dropped the ball. I'm not sure who dropped the ball on like sending information about this case back along when this question had been asked at a previous meeting. But I believe the town does have some information about it that is a matter of public record. And my understanding is also that the Human Rights Commission itself has a body of information that's a matter of public record that could be requested from them. And I'm not sure what the process is for that, if it's a FOIA request or if it's sort of as simple as reaching out to them, but
That sounds helpful in the sense of
My recommendation is
confirming
that-
that there was one.
is that,
Was
yeah,
there one or was there more than one?
was there one or more than one? What?
Human Rights Commission lawsuit and settlement?
I believe just one.
Yes.
Yeah.
just one.
And so I think, I guess I'm not, I want to help facilitate a process for you to get access to public information while also being mindful of the fact that sort of discussing details like in a public forum may be a violation of the
Settlement
privacy
itself.
rights of staff. And so I might bump this back to you as like,
So.
look into this on sort of on your own time a little bit. But if there are recommendations for the town about how we deal with sort of issues, including issues of systemic racism, writ large, that transcend a particular case, then that feels to me like a really constructive place for this group to be thinking and engaging in recommendations. Does that kind of make sense?
Right, because if it were
It's
like
also
a
possible.
lawsuit, somebody
Yeah.
brings against somebody, okay, maybe that is what it was. But if it's a Human Rights Commission lawsuit, what I know about that is they take cases that involve human rights. So we're
Yeah.
trying to learn from that so
Yeah.
that whatever it is doesn't happen again or in a repeating pattern. Which in some other cities I've lived in is how that happened because somebody swept it under the rug. So the same thing happened again.
Yeah,
I think
So-
my best recommendation would be for us to take a look at what is public knowledge.
Mhm.
And then once we've assessed what's public knowledge, then we can say, all right, we want to highlight this issue, but we are only going to highlight what is
Yeah.
public knowledge so that we are not infringing on any individual's rights. But we are still showcasing it so that we can understand and sort of give people that knowledge so that we don't repeat it. But we're sort of looking at all right, this is within all the guidelines, but also this usually lawsuits provide a very significant amount of information about what happened and how it happened, and especially in HRC cases, because I've worked with them before a little bit. And I think that we can just sort of corral public information and then platform it.
Mm,
And that
That
feels
sounds
the
right.
safest way.
yeah.
And it might be, this came up because we were listening to members of the public who said, what about that? So it might be that some of them want to do that work. Michael, that you just said.
All right, so I think sort of things that are within what the town has available as publicly available information, I can make a commitment to actually find and send to you. And then what the Human Rights Commission has on file as public information, perhaps one of you would be interested in looking to find and circulate to others who are interested.
I can certainly take
Do
a
you
look at what
wanna-
they have on their website. Yeah.
Okay, great.
I'm
Speak
a
more.
bit confused about why we're pursuing, like, what's the I mean, okay, so Michael and Malcolm, you said that the purpose is to distill the information and display it somewhere.
Yes.
Is that really the best use of our time? I wonder, I'm feeling that it's not.
I think that because if it was just a lawsuit by a person against the town, I would say absolutely, it's probably not a big intention of our time. However, the Human Rights Commission will not take small cases. They will not take cases that are not serious, and they will not take cases that are not usually fairly egregious breaches of human rights.
When the council was sort of deliberating the charge of the DEI,
Okay.
one of the things that we wanted to do was encourage big conversations about
Right.
big issues.
Yeah.
We have to be really careful that our big conversation about issues like systemic racism and other things that impact our whole community we don't want to focus on a particular, not that any particular case is not serious, but in terms of our sort of global response to something like institutional racism, we need your help to think big, right? And we cannot, either by law or by practice, relitigate an item that has already been adjudicated by the court. So I know from my perspective on the town council, and somebody who has really wanted to see DEIB work go forward in Orono for many years, I need help to sort of institutionalize how we move the town forward in a big way. And maybe, I don't want to misstate what Leah was saying, but maybe, seizing on a particular issue that has already been adjudicated, while it's good background information for us, doesn't move us forward as a town. And that's,
How do we know that?
well, you can read the document. Like, I can read the document, you can read the document. Like, I don't want anybody to be, any information to be withheld. I just know that those documents exist as artifacts of that case. They don't necessarily exist as the like what is globally happening in our community. So
I think I see what you're going for here. So feel free to correct me, but what I interpreted from that was that you think that focusing on this case rather than focusing on what we can value from the future, and that we can say we have learned from this case, and that sort of by talking about it here, that we've said, okay, people can look at the documents if they please, but in the interest of kind of not demonizing the town as an entity. That
I'm not worried about that. What I'm concerned with is, A, there is a legal sort of standard within that document that says the town will not publicize.
Yeah.
Okay, we're required not to publicize.
Okay,
The other thing, well, actually, all signatories to that agreement are bound by that. The other thing is, I think we live in a community of 11,000 people who all have, I don't know, it just seems like I want to be forward thinking. And at the same time, I don't want our progress to be withheld because of legal restriction. I think this committee, I think the town can do great things. And I'm not sure that trying to relitigate a case that has very strict restrictions in it helps us do that.
So,
Sorry.
There was,
yeah, one,
as someone who doesn't know about the details of what's in it, but there was a Human Rights Commission case in 2007 in Orono. That later, some years went by and a journalist wrote up in a book. And now students at UMaine read that book every single year. And it has to do with precedent for children's inclusion in schools, children of various genders. If nobody wrote about it, I'm not sure what's learned from it. It would have
So-
just been a.
so I wanna, and I think maybe this is a like piece of homework for Jeff and I, but wanted to propose as a possibility, since I'm sensing some real desire for there to be opportunity for like conversation. If there's something that seems like it's gonna deserve conversation, is that it's possible that that the DEIB committee could at some point have an executive session to have like a sort of conversation that's not televised, so it would be maintaining people's privacy, that could allow for more discussion of the details of a case than what is legally we could do in an open meeting
Right.
forum. And I think that would be a question for our lawyer that we'd need to look into, but I'd be willing to look at that as an opportunity for you folks if it's something that you're interested in.
so I wanted to highlight something that you said, kind of what I took from that is sort of a moving forward instead of looking back, I feel like. And I feel like my big thing is that I 100% agree. I think that looking forward is our best option. My kind of proposal of doing this is simply to provide people with the access to information that they otherwise might have to seek out very intentionally. I think that as the DEIB, that we are kind of first and foremost kind of a human rights as a concept thing. Like we are fighting for the rights of a lot of different kinds of people. And my focus here is not on kind of what this does to push us forward or back. It's just about whether or not people can see this information as in an easy way. I just want people to be able to say, like, I heard about this thing and I don't want to like be like 8 layers deep in the town website.
It's a really
It's
good
just
point.
about, it's simply about ease of access and nothing else.
So I appreciate this conversation. I agree with Jeff about moving the town forward. I also agree with Malcolm and Michael about using history to learn from it so that we don't repeat our former mistakes. I also really appreciate the idea of providing accessibility or ease of accessibility to documents that sometimes can be difficult to identify or find, or maybe people aren't even aware of it. What I wonder if we can find some kind of a a compromise with all of these thoughts. So perhaps the committee can review either through that kind of executive meeting and our individual time to review the actual case, the details of the case. I have no idea what the details are. And then we have a discussion about how we can broaden the topic. So perhaps we don't talk about the case, but we talk about the issue. Maybe it is about systemic racism. And instead, we have a public forum or a community dialogue or a listening session related to that particular topic. And that way, we're engaging the community and complementary to that, Michael, if you wanted to distill some of those documents and post it on the website.
That's really all I wanted to do.
According to
Yeah.
whatever the laws
Right, of course.
state, that could also be a way to provide access to the information. But in terms of what the committee, I believe, is charged to do, it really is about like having conversations and including the community, not just reporting out information.
Yeah,
I love that. I think that.
that's a really nice synthesis, Leah.
Yeah, it's such a great idea to like be like, all right, here's the post but other than that, like, what can we, like you said, kind of what can we distill from that? Like, what's the point? What's the point of the case? And then using that to be like, all right, is the issue here systemic racism, for example, like, and then really going into like, what does that look like? What does that mean for our community? How do we prevent systemic racism, or how do we make an impact, like a positive impact on systemic racism? And I think that that's such an awesome idea. I think that that works perfectly. And I think that that does sort of take the what may be overemphasizing a specific case, and it turns it into the opportunity for so much more.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Of course.
Let me let's around just a second to not be completely off the wall here. Are you looking for this to validate a belief of systemic racism in the town? I guess is my first question. Is that I've heard a couple different things. And now in my mind, the big bomb has been dropped, which is systemic racism. Is that what we're trying to flush out in the town, or in the town office anyway?
Without sifting through this, without knowing fully what the case is about, I honestly cannot answer that question. However, we are not trying to I personally am not trying to validate that there is systemic racism in Orono. I don't think that that serves any purpose like, there's just no purpose to being like, all right, we have systemic racism.
Sure.
Like, not only does that.
Which I think can be assumed to be true in sort of American culture writ large, is that systemic racism is the sea in which we all swim. And so
Sure.
I think it's not a question of like, this exists here and people should be ashamed or something, because it exists everywhere and we all need to figure out how to deal with it and move forward in a way that is trying to heal and trying to allow us to create a better future
Right.
in
I
which
feel
our
like-
systems are less oppressive, I guess is how I
To do
view
with
it, although that's
systemic racism.
that's my personal opinion, not
And-
the opinion.
Yeah, one person. And
Yeah.
I guess that's the worst thing to do. It's
I
systemic
think
racism. It's like all of us have a piece in it.
Right.
How is this working
Right.
in our midst, and how, if we, were to invest in something else, how would that show up instead?
I think my big thing is the reason that I want to bring this up specifically within Orono is I think that Orono is our bubble. It's the bubble that we live in. It's the idea, it's the thing that we sort of have control over. And sometimes the sea you swim in makes you feel like you're drowning. But if you're dealing with your puddle, it's a lot easier. And so it's really about this idea of what can we do in Orono? We can't change the entire world's systemic racism all at once, but what can we do to further Orono and less systemic racism specifically?
I appreciate that.
Does
Thank you.
that answer your
Yeah,
question?
yeah, thank you.
It was a really good question. Thank you for asking.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So we have some.
So that's that item.
It sounds like we've got a couple items of homework. I feel, does this sort of satisfy the initial question that you had, Malcolm? And Give us
Yeah.
the positive next steps. Okay.
Yeah. So we'll just put it down as like. Research and recap without attaching it to a particular case.
Great.
I definitely say just mostly doing our personal research on the case to kind of give us a better context on what we want to do. Even if that's just sort of like a brief looking over. I'm sure there's a simplification of kind of the big legal jargon. So just kind of giving ourselves enough depth of familiarity with the case. So that if we do want to have like an executive meeting later on, that we are able to use that time effectively.
So is this something that each of us independently are doing? Like, I don't even know what to Google.
So it's the Human Rights Commission versus the town of Orono.
Okay, and
Is
I
the
will find the
case.
information.
I
like,
can,
if
I
Google
will,
that.
I'll get an actual document and I'll put it in the email chain to make it
Okay,
easy
that
for
would,
you.
that would be great. Thank you.
Because
Yeah, Michael, I don't think we can put it in. Because I think that's, I know that we cannot release the town's settlement, we can release the town settlement agreement to any individual who wants it. I don't think we can, I don't think we're
But then
allowed,
I can just email it to Leah.
yes.
All right,
You
that's
Okay.
fine.
can have personal communication with anybody you want. I just think institutionally, the town is bound by some very strict rules.
All
Is
right,
it better
then
for
I'll just
each
email
individual to be
you.
requesting this information
Yes.
rather than Michael requesting for everybody else?
Well, the Maine Human Rights Commission operates by their own rules. I'm only talking about the settlement decision that the town is a signatory to. So I think what Sonia and I need to ask.
Because I'm not looking for a formal document from the town. I was just gonna look for documents.
There's no formal document. from the
Okay.
town. There is a settlement agreement the town
Yeah.
reached with an
Okay.
individual.
Good.
That settlement agreement is the only public document that the town possesses.
Okay,
Okay, and what I need to find out is whether I can just send it to the DEIB committee or whether I have to have each person send it individually, like, is
okay.
it an individual ask for each person?
Is that something that you can check on, bounce to
Yes.
Sonia and
Yeah.
then Sonia will
We
let us
will,
know?
we will follow up this time. We will not drop the ball.
Okay.
We've done some good work tonight, people. We started with the creative
Email.
program.
Oh,
We got to an action oriented in support of a long process between town and tribal nation. We named some big things that are systemic racism, and we said, what does this feel like? Does this feel like a bomb? Does this feel like a personal? What does this feel like? We don't even know yet how we can improve, but naming those questions tonight was huge. We have a meeting coming up next month, which would be a regular one, meaning we should already know the date because it's the second, no, help me remember, is it the second Tuesday?
I believe it is.
Unless we change it.
Second Tuesday, I believe that it should be the 7th, or not the 7th, the 14th.
I believe that that is true.
Say it again, say it loud.
The 14th of November should be our next meeting.
Tuesday, November 14th, 6
6
P M.
p.m. Does that work for everyone?
7:30, by the way.
Probably yes, cool.
I said probably. And we get to have a volunteer to be the facilitator of that meeting. It's been rotating
Mhm.
through us each month. Somebody who hasn't done it, would you like to?
I think I might be the only one who hasn't.
If you can't, be awesome.
So, yeah.
So,
Cool.
Leah,
Thanks, Leah. I
Which
think
means,
Carla
like,
hasn't yet
the
either.
week before shooting
the
an
next step.
agenda around. And the 3 items I captured tonight, which I could also email you, but they're the beginning of the follow-up type thing.
And I'm sure that if any assistance is needed, I'm sure that we have folks to provide that. Sonia, I do work it all with the formatting of this guy.
I typically don't, but I think that we'll figure that out.
Okay,
Yep.
because whoever that is, we can direct them Leah's way so that we
Yeah,
don't leave
I
Leah
think that,
stranded.
so I think Sophie, the town manager, is, would be the right person for our November meeting to coordinate with that about.
Cause I'm sure she has all the formatting and such for like
Yeah.
the agendas.
We're just tabling the leads on listening series for next month?
We haven't gotten there tonight. And with 5 minutes left, do we want to? Or it's still out there and
I don't think it's more than a 5-minute conversation, so table it for the future.
What was the question? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
This
Oh, yes,
listening
okay.
session thing, do we
That's
want to do
actually
it
gonna-
5 minutes or do it
I-
another time?
I think it needs more time, but
Yeah.
that is also gonna get wrapped into the journal draft that I started, so.
Okay, cool.
So I think that that's better that we table it, because then it can get wrapped into the document that begins.
wow, cool.
Thank you for facilitating a timely meeting tonight, Malcolm.
Thank you, everyone who was able to come. Thank you, anyone who came on Zoom. And thank you, Lori, and thank you,
Jeff.
Jeff, and thank you, other Jeff.
I was like, hold on, are they both Jeff?
I know, it
Jeff,
was
yes.
like a blink moment. So. We're adjourned. Peace.
Okay.
Good night.
Woo.
My roommate